Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Classic Gaming Brothers. I'm Seth.
And I'm Zach.
And we are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
We are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right.
That's right.
Welcome to the beginning of the year, I guess.
Yes,
yeah.
beginning of the year.
Exciting. Beginning of the year, we could set out challenges and promises and goals.
Why didn't we do that in our episode at the beginning of the year
That episode was very long.
That's true. That's true.
Then we had an episode about SNK, and now I'm just thinking about the future.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad you're just now thinking about the future.
It's better to start to think about the future now than later. So, anyway, what have you been playing?
Well, Seth, recently I've been playing a game that's a sequel to a game you were recently playing.
Ooh.
Yeah, so you were playing Chip's Challenge. I was playing Chip's Challenge 2.
I was recently most playing Diablo, but you have not played Diablo nor Diablo 2 yet, have you?
No, well, I gotta go in order, because you were playing Chip's Challenge before you were playing Diablo.
I see.
So that's why I'm playing Chip's Challenge 2.
Are you going to actually play Diablo, or are you just going to play Diablo 2?
Well, I have a copy of Diablo, so I'll probably play Diablo.
Okay. I just thought it would be funny if you only played the sequels of the games that I played.
That would be funny and very in character for our family. But anyway, Chip's Challenge 2 was released in 2015 by Chuck Somerville, who is the original creator of Chip's Challenge. And it's the lost long sequel to Chip's Challenge. The game was originally intended to be released in around 2005, but the company that originally had created Chip's Challenge, that Chuck Somerville had created the game for, Epix, declared bankruptcy, and the rights to Chip's Challenge had gone to Bridgestone Media, who refused to release Chip's Challenge 2 unless they were paid a large sum of money. I don't know exactly how much the sum of money was. It was an undisclosed sum of money that was very large and that Chuck Somerville did not want to pay. So,
feel that, Chuck.
At some point, at least 10 years later, he did find a way to get the game released without having to pay that much money. And the game is pretty much the same as Chip's Challenge 1, but with more maps and as some new mechanics. So there's some new collectible boots. So in the original Chip's Challenge, you can get boots that you can use to like swim across water or go across ice. In Chip's Challenge 2, there is a speed up boot that you can wear that you can go fast with. There's also hiking boots for the character Melinda, because Melinda, who's a whole new character you can play as, is able to walk on ice without slipping, but can't walk on dirt without hiking boots. So Chip can walk on dirt without hiking boots, but Chip needs special boots to walk on ice or he'll slip.
Can you have more than 4 boots?
No, but there's now the option to drop boots, which I don't know if was there in the first game. So you can drop boots instead of having to go to one of the sketchy CIA operatives who steal your boots. They look like they're just like little pictures of guys with glasses, and they take your boots.
That's right.
So you can just drop them now, which is a nice little feature. There's also some new mechanics in terms of like there's these sea turtles that you can walk on water, but if you step off of them, they fall into the water and your path is blocked. So you have to kind of mentally plan out your route before you start walking, or else you'll lose your path and be forced to restart the level. And like Chip's Challenge 1, if you die, you start from the very beginning of the map, or the very beginning of the level. So if you are very close to the end and you fall into the water by accident, you'll have to start from the very beginning of potentially a very long level, which is very obnoxious. But such is these type of games. You can pick up Chip's Challenge 2 on Steam. It's currently like $2.99 or something ridiculous. I got it for pretty cheap. I got it during the sale, but it's usually a couple bucks, give or take.
And there's a Chip's Challenge 3.
There's Chuck's Challenge.
Is that also by Chuck Somerville?
Yes. Chuck's Challenge is Chuck's Challenge 3D and was released before Chip's Challenge 2. Chuck's Challenge 3D is the game he released during the time between Chip's Challenge 1 and being unable to release Chip's Challenge 2. It's a very similar game, but it's built in an entirely different engine and has different, a lot of different mechanics.
It's like a Shotoruken type situation. What's the...
Sokoban. Shoryuken is the Street Fighter move.
That's the Shoryuken is the character that's unlockable in Street Fighter that you
Nope.
cannot beat.
Shoryuken is the move that Ryu does where he does an uppercut.
He also
Shen
tells you
Long
people-
is the character that is the lost character.
No, you must defeat Shotoriken before you
Yes,
can...
okay, yes, fair enough. Okay, there you go.
Chip's challenge is like a Sokuban.
Yes, yeah, it's block pushing, basically. You push blocks to get to place.
Is Chuck's challenge 3D a Sokuban?
Yes, yes.
Is it in
Chuck's-
3D?
It's in 3D graphics. It's not like in 3D. It's not like stereoscopic. You don't have to wear special glasses to play the game.
That would be great.
I would love that. Get on that, Chuck Somerville.
Yeah, I feel like Chuck Somerville should develop a 3D like a Oculus or a
I want Chips Challenge VR. I'd be into it.
VR. Yeah, that'd be pretty fun. I mean, the way you presented it, it sounded like Chuck Somerville was just waiting to make another Chips Challenge for 10 years. It's like a swan song. He only made Chips Challenge and that's it. He only knows how to make Chips Challenge.
Seth, what about you? What have you been playing?
So recently I've been playing Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which was released, I was going to say last year, but it was not last year. It was 2 years ago in 2019, towards the end. So it's almost like last year. It's a Star Wars game, evident by the title and everything in the title. It's a Star Wars game that's in the vein of the Star Wars Jedi Knight series. The game is more action-y than it is roleplay. Star Wars The Old Republic and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic are both more in the role-playing sessions where you do like turn-based combat and you progress through a story of dark side and light side, winning and losing. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order and the Star Wars Jedi Knight series before it are more like concerned about the platforming and action of your character. So you get cool powers, you get to jump across things, you run on walls, you use the Force to fight things, slow things down. It's pretty cool. In the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order game, you play as Cal Kestis instead of playing Kyle Katarn, which is a choice, but Cal is pretty cool. So he gets a little robot, like BD-1, I think its name is, and he like rides on you. That's probably my favorite part. I got pretty far in the game, and then I stopped playing it for almost a year and a half at least, and decided that it was time to get in there and play it because I like Star Wars, and with all the Mandalorian, Book of Boba, and all that stuff, I gotta finish this game so I can be prepared for the next onslaught of Star Wars games that's going to hit us. Since I've pretty much played or beat all previous Star Wars games. If there's one game franchise that I can beat, it's just Star Wars.
That includes Yoda stories.
That includes Yoda stories.
Well, today we're not talking about Star Wars games. We're talking about a game that came out for a system that we talked about in the last episode. That system is the Neo Geo, and that game is Metal Slug. As we alluded to back in episode 110, I said that we would be talking more about Metal Slug, and in fact, we were talking about it for an entire episode this episode.
That's right.
So it's Metal Slug time.
This episode's actually been in the works for quite some time, since I thought about doing this episode back when I was playing Metal Slug many months ago, and said, oh, we should do an episode on Metal Slug. And then we got to the time where we were going to do an episode on Metal Slug, and I was like, what if people don't know anything about SNK or the Neo Geo? Maybe they should know about that first. And here we are. If you want to know about SNK and the Neo Geo, just listen to the episode before this one. And if you just want to know about Metal Slug, that's this one. But we're going to set the ground rules that you already know what SNK is and what Neo Geos are, so we don't need to explain those.
So before we get into talking about the history of Metal Slug, Seth, do you have any memories of Metal Slug?
Most of my memories of Metal Slug are more recent and playing it. It's a fun game to play. It holds up even today. I mean, the game, especially with the rise of like retro gaming and people homebrewing their games and releasing new games for like the SNES and the Sega Genesis, you could say like the 1996 original Metal Slug game, you could say it came out today and people would believe you because it plays really, really fluid and is really, really good. The memories of actually seeing it in the wild as a child are few and far between. The arcades maybe had Metal Slug machines available. I did not know anybody that had a Neo Geo or a Neo Geo CD that played it. So beyond playing it recently, I don't have any concrete memories of it. But it's like one of those games that just exists in the like aether where you kind of just know about it. If I showed somebody Metal Slug and was like, this game is Metal Slug by SNK, they would probably be like, I have seen this game somewhere before.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you have any memories with it?
So I don't remember when exactly I first became aware of Metal Slug. I bought a copy of Metal Slug 3 for Steam, and I don't remember why or when.
Probably on sale.
It was probably on sale, and I do like it. I do like Metal Slug a lot. I personally haven't seen it in arcades, at least in a while. To be fair, though, I haven't been in an arcade in a very long time, largely due to a little thing that has been affecting our entire planet. So let's get right into the history. Metal Slug first got its start on SNK's Neo Geo hardware in 1996. The game was created by a team of developers who had previously worked on games for a company called IREM. IREM had its start as far back as 1969, when its founder, Kenzo Sugimoto, founded a store to sell machines for cotton candy stores. In the 1970s, Sugimoto saw the appeal of electronic games and would soon begin the manufacturing of pachinko machines. Pachinko machines, for those of you who don't know what they are, and I don't think we mentioned this in the last episode when we mentioned them, they're a type of gambling device. Pachinko is very popular in Japan, not so much popular here in America, though I wouldn't be surprised if you might see a pachinko machine in your lifetime if you go to like a casino or something like that.
There's actually usually a dedicated sections of pachinko machines at your local casino for the Asian tourists.
What you do is you place a bet on where balls are going to fall, like into slots, then balls fall, and wherever they fall is where if you put the bet in the right place, you'll win. It is actually kind of a little bit addicting because I have played pachinko video games before because they are sometimes found in like RPG games and stuff. Anyway, Sugimoto saw success from pachinko machines, and the success he saw led him to the creation of a company called IPM, or International Playing Machine, in 1974. IPM was originally founded to just build and install video game machines for small stores throughout Japan, but Sugimoto saw that there could be a more lucrative option for him, which is to create video games themselves. Their first video game was called IPM Invaders. It was a clone of Space Invaders, and it came out in 1978. The next year, however, in 1979, they received a letter from the American computer company IBM, and IBM was not a big fan of IPM starting to become in the public eye. They requested that they change their name. So IPM responded in kind and changed their name to the International Rental Electronics Machines, or IREM.
So the newly named IREM company would continue to make games through the 1980s, and they would make games such as Moon Patrol, R-Type, and a game called Gun Force. Gun Force, and its sequel Gun Force 2, should be very familiar to fans of Metal Slug, as they share similar graphics and gameplay. In fact, the team that worked on Gun Force 2 would go to leave IREM in 1994, largely due to IREM being mostly inactive at that time with making video games. The employees who left formed a company called Nazca Corporation, which would be eventually acquired by SNK, and they acquired Nazca in 1996. Nazca's first game, Neo Turf Masters, would be released in 1996. This was not a game where you were collecting Neo Turf creatures or anything like that. It was a golf game and was considered to be a pretty good golf game. Their second game would also be released in 1996. This game would be called Metal Slug. Metal Slug shares a lot in common with the previous games made by the team from IREM, but not a lot in common with Neo Turf Masters.
No.
As we mentioned, it plays fairly similar to the Gun Force games and also uses some similar graphical assets. Along with these similarities, it also used sound effects from King of Fighters. Originally, the game was going to be centered around the titular Metal Slug, which is an armored tank. The game was going to be slower paced, with the player piloting the tank across short missions. The atmosphere of the game was also intended to be much darker than the final game had. This version of the game, though, was heavily criticized during the initial testing where they tested with a limited audience. The overall gameplay was dramatically overhauled, with the player character having more focus outside of the tank and the missions being extended and made more complex. However, the tank does show up in the game where you can pilot it for a temporary period of time, but the majority of the game is played outside as your character. The change to the mission length and complexity was also due to SNK hoping the game would do well in the home console market as well as the arcade. Now, just remember, this is what SNK wants. They want 60 success in the home console market. This will come up when we talk about the numbers.
In regards to the plot and overall gameplay of Metal Slug is what we would call a run and gun game. This is a genre that Seth and I think have alluded to, but we haven't really talked too much about. But it's a really popular genre for arcades. Run and gun games are primarily games that involve a character or multiple characters if you're doing multiplayer, moving from one portion of the screen to the next. You could have vertical run and gun, you could have horizontal run and gun. They're pretty much just always moving though. These characters also have a never-ending supply of bullets at their disposal. You can constantly shoot with your primary and you don't have any limit to the bullets there, though if you pick up like a new gun, such as a like more rapid fire gun or a spread gun, that might have a limit to the ammunition. Now, besides Metal Slug, some other games like Ikari Warriors, Contra, or more recently Cuphead fall under the run and gun style of gameplay. Now, in the game Metal Slug, the player assumes the role of Captain Marco Rossi and Lieutenant Tarma Roving of the Peregrine Falcon Strike Force. In the game, you go through mission after mission, fighting off swarms of enemies using a variety of guns and your trusty combat knife. You can also hop into a tank if you find one and pilot that for a short period of time. Throughout the game, you encounter prisoners of war who can be rescued for power-ups and other bonus points. At the end of each level, based on the number of POWs you free, you'll receive a corresponding bonus based on the overall number. If you die before you reach the end of the level, your POW score will revert to 0. So if you've saved 5 POWs and then you die in the middle of the level, you will have 0 POWs until you rescue more. Players can die from a variety of means, such as enemy fire, colliding against certain obstacles, or just falling off the stage. And the game is over unless you insert more credits to continue playing. There are 6 missions in total. Each take place in a variety of locations, such as forests, garrison cities, mountains, valleys, canyons, and military bases. In your path are enemy soldiers, tanks, artillery, aircraft, armored personnel carriers, and the occasional boss that you have to encounter. And the bosses in Metal Slug tend to be very bombastic. They're like screen covering bosses sometimes, where your character will appear very small and the entire screen will be filled with the boss.
They also have like sub bosses too, that like you have to fight like a sub boss and then they go on to a bigger boss type situation. One of the bosses that I really liked was there was a train that you have to fight.
There's also some humor in the game. So as Seth mentioned, in the original version, it was going to be a little darker in tone. They did decide to lighten it up a bit with some humor. So when you encounter enemies, for example, most of the time they're depicted as like sunbathing, or they might be just like joking around with each other, or they might be cooking dinner. And if they see you, sometimes they'll let out a scream and they'll either charge to attack you, or sometimes they'll even just run away. So there is some funny parts about the game. The game itself, in terms of story, takes place in 2028. During this time, 2 militant factions are battling for power: the Rebellion and the quote-unquote Regular Army. The Regular Army consists of various nations who are allied around the world. The Rebellion is a smaller, organized group of terrorists and also a splinter military force. The conflict largely arose due to the attempted assassination of the President of the United States, launched by the Rebellion under General Donald Morden. To combat Morden, the Regular Army constructed tanks designated as Super Vehicle-001, or Metal Slugs. Now in 2028, the tanks were seized by the rebels, and the Regular Army has begun to fall into ruin. Marco Rossi of the Regular Army Peregrine Falcon Special Forces Unit decides to unite remaining special forces, and he begins a commando operation to reclaim the tanks. And that's where your story begins. So in terms of weapons, there's a number of weapons in the game. There is, of course, the pistol that you start out with, and the pistol has unlimited ammo, so you are able to just kind of nonstop spam that if you need it. There's also a knife that you use to melee, and there are some special weapons that you can pick up. The first being the heavy machine gun. Now, the heavy machine gun, as the name implies, shoots very fast, and usually carries an ammo amount of about 200 bullets, though you will go through this in a very quick time. Then there's the rocket launcher. The rocket launcher shoots rockets, which do splash damage as well to enemies that are surrounding the initial blast area. The shotgun has 30 blasts of kind of like a spread that you can do. There's also the flame shot, And the flame shot is kind of like the shotgun, except it shoots this massive fireball. And that has about 30 uses. And the rocket launcher has 30 uses as well. Most of the weapons have 30 uses, except for the heavy machine gun, which has 200 bullets.
And then, of course, there is the Super Vehicle 001 that you get to occupy and drive around. And you get to drive the tank in the game for a decent amount. It's not like some games where you're like on it for a very temporary part of the time. You're on it until it gets destroyed, and then you can find another one. You can take that, and there is a decent amount of time in the Metal Slug, as it were, as well as being out of it. Now, how did Metal Slug do? Metal Slug did fairly well on its initial release. Not only was it positively reviewed by magazines of the era, such as Game Machine magazine, which we talk about a lot on the podcast, it earned the 7th most popular arcade machine in June of '96 by that publication. The Japanese magazine Game Machine is really one of the gold standards for like archival information for specifically Japanese releases. They did a lot of game charting and stuff like that even back in the 90s. So that's why they're a commonly used reference. In the United States, it was one of the top 10 highest grossing arcade games in 1996, with Sega's Daytona USA earning the number 1 slot. I feel like Metal Slug is definitely... I feel like it was more readily available in Japan, but I feel like it was definitely more appreciated by the American audience. While the game did score very well, it wasn't without criticism, with a lot of people remarking on the difficulty of Metal Slug. The AES version was equally criticized, as it lacked an option for limited continues, meaning that the game could be theoretically completed in one sitting, and thus lost replayability. I've beaten the original Metal Slug. I died a lot, but because there was nothing stopping me from restarting the game, I was still able to do it. Now, it took a bit of work to determine how the original Metal Slug sold, mostly because SNK took care of the original AES and Neo Geo CD's sales by mail directly and sold them mail ordered to their consumers. So back in the day, in the 90s, let's say it's 1996, and you wanted to buy the game Metal Slug for your AES. Well, first off, you own a very expensive system, so you're probably very wealthy. And then you reach out to SNK through mail and place an order, and then they send you a copy. Kind of like Amazon, except instead of next day delivery, it's like next week delivery. Possibly even longer, because you have to write them a letter. That takes a few days to get there. And then they have to send you the package after they process your payment, and then you get it. I never bought anything through mail. And as a child, I feel like I should have, just to enjoy it, the experience. But I know for sure you never bought anything through mail.
No.
We were at the end of the era of buying things through the mail. The AES version of Metal Slug was produced in a very limited run and was sold initially in Japan during the summer of its release in 1996. Now, while the US was still kind of digesting the game and starting to really fall in love with it, by the time Metal Slug became popular in the United States and you wanted to order the game from SNK, they had no games. The rumors are that there was a very, very limited amount of AES cartridges created for the US market. Around 500 to 1,000 units, but that wasn't confirmed anywhere. It was just a rumor that they produced far less units for the US market than they did the Japanese market. Regardless, if you wanted to buy an AES cartridge, you couldn't. People were desperate to play Metal Slug on their AES system, however. So they would take MVS, which was the arcade cabinet, and take the cartridge out of the MVS and convert it to work into an AES system. Now, let's talk about trying to get this game today. If you wanted to get an MVS converted AES cartridge of Metal Slug, you're looking at about $150 to $250. A loose AES copy of Metal Slug without anything but just a cartridge could sell anywhere between $17,000 to $24,000, which is speculation, since the last time a loose copy of the game sold, it went for $1,500, but that was in 2013, which was almost 10 years ago, with a vastly different market. With video game collecting still at a pretty high peak with the bubble that hasn't burst, I would say a loose copy of Metal Slug, if it was to emerge, probably $17,000 to $24,000 is what my guesstimate would be. The most recent complete inbox, which means it was not sealed, it was just everything that was in the original box when it came out, which means that different, like the manual and the box, could have all been sourced from different games, sold in 2020 for $59,500. So that was the last time Metal Slug sold, and it was a CIB copy, which is why we're saying a loose copy would probably sell at this time in this market 17 to 24. I think that's going to be half of what the complete in-box copy sold for. If you find a newly sealed copy of Metal Slug for the US market, you would probably be able to fetch double, maybe even double again for a complete in-box copy. There weren't games available, and Metal Slug wasn't the only game that SNK did this. In 1996, SNK was manufacturing AES cartridges at a rate that was just 10% of the rate that the company was previously producing in the early 90s. They were just making this commodity as limited as available, which, based on the cost of the AES versions of cartridges, which we talked about in our previous episode, not a bad strategy.
Unfortunately, it didn't work for SNK because they went out of business. They initially declared bankruptcy, and then they're still around now, but it might not have been a great business practice.
Well, yeah, but if you're selling a game for $200 to $400 for a cartridge in 1996, then what was it, $400? Yeah, $400 for an AES cartridge, MSRP in 1996. You're probably not producing them for 10 cents.
No, and also you're probably not selling them like off the shelves. So producing them in lower quantity meant that you didn't have to.
Yeah, it was direct mail. It was the only way you could buy them was through mail. So there was no retail version. Like they weren't shipping batches to retailers to put on their shelves. Because you have to think about, like, even a distribution, let's say you want to have 2 copies of your game in every state in the United States of America. That's 100 copies right there, but that's 2 copies in every one store in every state. More realistically, you're probably going to have maybe 1,000 copies per state and, spread throughout maybe 50 stores. They weren't working with that. They were just making them, and you write them a letter and they'll send you a copy if they have them, or if they'll send you your check back if they don't.
Metal Slug was not only a success, it was also a franchise building success. Since the release of the first game, there have been 6 official numbered sequels. The most recent game being Metal Slug 7, which released in 2008 for the Nintendo DS. Along with these sequels, there have also been spin-offs, such as 2 games called Metal Slug First Mission and Metal Slug Second Mission, which were released on the Neo Geo Pocket Color system. There was also a handheld title called Metal Slug Advance for the Game Boy Advance, and a third-person shooter on the PS2, simply titled Metal Slug, which was released in 2006. An anthology of the first 6 games saw release in 2006 for a variety of consoles, such as the Wii, PC, PS2, and PSP. This collection was also re-released on the PS3 and the PS4 in 2015 and 2016, respectively. Metal Slug, I think, has this kind of interesting history as well, where there was also some crossover into some of the King of Fighters games. So some of the characters do show up in King of Fighters, which is always an exciting time to get to play as some of your favorite Metal Slug characters and beating up some of your favorite Art of Fighting characters, or Fatal Fury characters. So that is Metal Slug.
That's going to be our Metal Slug episode. What a fun episode that was. It's time to do our Bawuppa. Our buy-weight pass. I wonder if everybody else who listens to the show calls it the Bawuppa now. If it's just us.
Maybe.
Sometimes when you're like producing something, you talk to yourself a lot, like in your audience. Like we call it the Bawuppa, right? But we're not the consumer of the product.
That's true.
If you call it the Bawuppa, send us an email and we'll give you a free game. You have to say in the email that you call it the Bawuppa, and then you have to write it out how you might spell Bawuppa. Anyway.
Do you want me to do the first?
You could do. Yes, lead me
Okay.
in.
I'll
start listening.
Okay, your game is going to be it's a tactical role-playing game. So it's a older genre, but a popular genre. So in this tactical role-playing game, Seth, there are two forces that you are battling against. There is the kind of primary government forces, as well as a rebellion that you have to quell, because this rebellion is attacking your primary government forces. And you have to do this via a roguelike tactical RPG, similar to like Final Fantasy Tactics or Shining Force, if you would. Are you interested in this game? I know you're a fan of Shining Force.
Sure.
This game is Metal Slug Tactics.
Oh, let's take some time and cut while I look up the game. And we're back. It looks a lot like Advance Wars, except themed Metal Slug.
Yeah, I mean, Advance Wars is a tactical role-playing game, so fitting.
This is, interestingly enough, not being published by SNK, but it is being done in conjunction with SNK. It's being published by .emu, which is one of Zach's favorite publishers. I am interested. I feel like I knew this existed because I think it announced back in 2021. I'm going to put it down as a wait. I don't play a lot of these styles of games nowadays, but it looks cool and I like the Metal Slug world. So yeah, we'll put it down as a wait. All right, Zach, are you ready?
I am.
What if I told you we've done this before? Not once, but 100 times. Maybe even more. And unlike the truth, in 5 minutes, you won't remember any of it. And you have to do it all over again.
Okay, what game is this?
Life. No, it's actually a game called Escape the Loop.
We'll be right back. I'm going to look up Escape the Loop and find out what this game is all about. And we're back. So Escape the Loop is a game that, as Seth was kind of implying with his description, looks to be a time loop, which I think is a very cool concept. I personally love time loops. I think they're very interesting. I also love open world games, which this is. And I like games that are also kind of a bit more relaxing in the sense that they are a bit more like contemplative. And that's what this looks like it could be as well. So personally, I am into the idea of Escape the Loop. It's being developed by Pixel Maniacs and published by Pixel Maniacs and due out to be determined. And I'll put it down on my wish list and I'll say it's a buy.
Ooh, I haven't gotten a buy on Zach in a while.
Yeah, so that's going to be a buy for me. Escape the Loop.
That's exciting. I put it down my wish list too. It looks like a fun game. Anyway, thank you all for listening to us. We always appreciate your time, and we like when you check in with us and listen to the episode and enjoy the episode. If you want to listen to more episodes, you can always check us out. We are at classicgamingbrothers.com. We also are where you can get any podcasts, any podcasting apps. We are available on them. We can, if you want to send us how you say Bawoopa, you can always send us an email at classicgamingbrothers@gmail.com. And if you want to support us, you can listen, rate us, give us thumbs ups, and give us a follow on our social medias. Our Facebook and Instagram and Twitch are Classic Gaming Brothers, and our Twitter is CG Brothers Pod. And we announce every episode on Facebook and Twitter. So there's that. Stay tuned for this year. We're excited to enter this year. Stay tuned for fun and exciting projects that we're trying to get off the ground, slowly but surely. But that's that. Zach, did I miss anything?
Don't play games like my brother.
And don't play games like my brother.
I've been Zach.
And I've been Seth.
And we've been the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right. Is there like a big snake enemy? I feel like there's a big snake enemy in every freaking game from the 90s. I think there's one in Metal Slug, but I feel like there's one in every freaking game. Metal Slug, Rocket Knight, Sonic, that game